Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another video for you guys called Could Naruto Defeat the Akatsuki? Now this is another video that was requested, so we're going to be watching it, and personally I don't think that Naruto could beat the Akatsuki. At least part 1 Naruto couldn't beat the Akatsuki. If we're talking 4th grade Ninja War Naruto, then okay, yeah, then we have someone. But other than that, I don't really think Naruto stands a chance. Even if if he's going up against the entire Akatsuki, then no, I think that he would have a very difficult time, as powerful as he is. But if we're talking end of series Naruto, six path stage mode Naruto, then I would say yeah, he has a pretty strong chance. So anyway, let's just go ahead and watch the video and we'll listen to what Swag has to say.
How's it going, everybody? Swagkage here, and today I'm going to be doing something similar to what I did in my last video. And now, if you haven't watched it yet, you don't really need to know
Which we did watch, by the way.
what it's about. One look at the title and the thumbnail should make that fairly obvious. But if you are new around here, you may need a bit of context to understand the attitude that I'm going to have throughout most of this video. So it probably isn't too hard to guess that the Madara video caused a bit of controversy. Like, it ended up making a lot of people mad, and I didn't mean for that to happen, but in hindsight, I guess I don't really know what I expected. I have a bit of a reputation for being a Madara hype beast, like to an extent that annoys some people, and with the way I titled the video, it was kind of bound to piss some people off. And so I feel like at this point talking about Madara is just kind of a lost cause. I don't want to deal with people just being like, oh man, but you don't know what you're talking about. You're just biased, Swagkage. But at the same time, I really wanted to make a follow-up video defending my stance because a lot of the comments that I got on that video admittedly left me a little bit salty. I spent a really long time working on it, and to put all the effort into the video that I did only to get comments from people unironically claiming stuff like,
but Swagkage, see, Madara got killed by Zetsu, so how's he supposed to take on the entire Akatsuki?
It grinded my gears a little bit. So then I was like, okay, if people won't listen to what I have to say about Madara, then I guess the best way to support my argument is to explain in a separate video why I think an even weaker character could take the entire Akatsuki out by themselves. And so here we are. And now, before anybody really gets their jimmies rustled, no, I am not claiming that Hokage Naruto is weaker than any of the versions of Madara that I was discussing in that video, not by a long shot. But we're not going to be talking about Hokage Naruto in this video. We're not going to be talking about the last Naruto or even Sage of Six Paths Naruto. This video is going to be focusing on War Arc Naruto. To be more specific, not Naruto from the early stages of the War Arc, like right after he'd gained the ability to enter QB Chakra mode, but like full power pre-Six Paths Naruto, the one who could stack Sage mode on top of KCM2. Now, even though I think Madara has an overall easier time against the Akatsuki, I think it's easier to make an argument in Naruto's favor than it is to do the same for Madara because of a handful of different factors. The first is that if everyone is in character here, then Naruto will enter this fight with a decent amount of intel on multiple Akatsuki members. Naruto knows practically everything about pain, and he also knows a good bit about the abilities of Deidara, Kakazu, and Itachi. He should also have a pretty decent understanding of how Obito's Kamui functions, since he learned a fair bit about it when Kakashi identified the jutsu's weaknesses. Now, for the sake of fairness, that would also mean that any member of the Akatsuki that's fought Naruto in the past would have to go into this fight with any knowledge they gained from fighting Naruto. And of course, I know that doesn't make any sense because Kakazu and Nagato both died immediately after their fights with Naruto. But to keep things simple, we'll just say they get brought back with Rinne Rebirth or the fucking Dragon Balls or something, because it definitely isn't fair to give Naruto the intel that he's acquired over the course of the series and not do the same for the Akatsuki. Now, in my opinion, this doesn't really make much of a difference. The only people who should know anything about Naruto's QB Chakra mode are Nagato and Itachi, thanks to their brief skirmish with him while they were reanimated, but they shouldn't know that he can stack Sage mode on top of this transformation, or that he can manifest a Chakra avatar in the shape of Kurama. So no matter how you slice it, unless you completely take intel out of the equation, Naruto has the edge in terms of knowledge here. Naruto is also really well known for using the Shadow Clone Jutsu, and even though Madara can use it as well, he definitely...
Which is kind of important because I think it's been kind of established in this series is that, if you have knowledge on your opponent's abilities and how they work, it can give you the edge in battle. For example, Naruto used his knowledge of Pain's abilities, or at least Tendo Pain's, and used it to beat him, just like how he knew that if he were to use abilities like Shinra Tensei or Bansho Tenin, there would be a 5-second delay before he could use it again, and Naruto ended up using it to his advantage. And even though the ability is pretty broken, I mean, seriously, it's actually pretty damn powerful. And it was used by someone who isn't even probably the most powerful Rinnegan user that we've seen in the series. I mean, imagine if someone like Madara or end of series Sasuke or adult Sasuke or any of the members of the Otsutsuki clan who have a Rinnegan, imagine if they were to use an ability like Almighty Push or Universal Pull. I mean, it could cause an insane amount of damage. But because the ability had a weakness, Naruto was able to exploit it, and he was able to secure the victory. So if Naruto does have, you could say, knowledge about the Akatsuki's abilities beforehand, and considering how creative Naruto can be with his fight strategies, yeah, I can see how he could edge out the victory, because Naruto has been, I think it's been stated by multiple people, to have a really unorthodox way of fighting, and it could give someone like Sasuke, someone who is stated by a lot of people to be a once-in-a-lifetime genius, even he gets, taken by surprise with Naruto's strategies. It just goes to show you sometimes an unorthodox way of fighting can just get you the victory.
Definitely isn't as good at it as Naruto is. The Shadow Clone Jutsu is also kind of Naruto's thing, like it's his signature move, so I imagine people probably have an easier time picturing him using it in a hypothetical scenario like this. But none of this is anywhere near as important as the fact that Naruto's Shadow Clones are ridiculous, especially by the time of the War Arc, where they're almost as much of a threat as he is. Like, for example, Naruto sent one of his clones to assist the 4th Division in a pretty difficult battle, and this clone nearly one-shot the second Swagkage, was almost single-handedly responsible for the defeat of the 3rd Raikage, and still somehow had enough chakra left over when Madara showed up to create shadow clones of its own, perform multiple Odama Rasengan, a Rasen Shuriken, and then do this thing where he created like 200 shadow clones and then had all of them shove Odama Rasengan into Madara's oncoming wood release jutsu. One clone did all of these things, and it was created by a Naruto who was substantially weaker than the one that we're talking about in this video. This clone was so strong that Dodai chose to save it over multiple actually living people. He let them die because Naruto was such a valuable asset that his clone's presence was worth more to the people there than preserving the lives of some of their fellow soldiers. That is absurd. And then after Naruto dispels this clone, along with 11 other shadow clones that he sent to various other places across the world, he still somehow has enough chakra and stamina left over to take on Obito and 6 Biju. Then Madara shows up, he still has enough chakra to keep fighting, and then the Jubi shows up, he still has enough chakra to keep fighting, and then Obito becomes the Jubi Jinchuriki, he still has plenty of chakra to keep fighting, so much.
See, the thing is, when it comes to that, I will say, even though, yeah, look, we can't deny they did happen, so you do have to take it into account, but personally, I would say this is more of a narrative oversight when it comes to the author. I think it's him sort of conveniently giving Naruto these insane feats, even though it doesn't really make a lot of sense for him to have continuously fought for like 24 hours straight and somehow still have enough chakra to keep fighting. See, personally, again, I would say this is more of an oversight on Kishimoto's part as opposed to a possible feat from Naruto, because look, Naruto has been stated to have an insane amount of chakra due to being a member of the Uzumaki clan, but personally, I don't think it's plausible for him to have actually been able to perform all these feats on his own without getting some outside help from the author. But I just wanted to say something about that. It's just, you do see a lot of it in the war arc. Like, for example, we saw Kakashi continuously spam Kamui, even though the last time we saw him use it, just using it twice put him in the hospital. Now, yes, someone could say maybe he off-screen trained his body to be able to handle using Kamui, but again, to me, the fact that it happened off-screen isn't good enough. I need to have actually seen it to be able to see it as like a reasonable excuse as to how he's able to do it. Like, don't just tell me, oh, they did it off screen, so it makes sense. It's just, come on, you got to show us these things.
much of it that he's like, I don't know what to do with all this, and he gives it to the other members of the allied shinobi forces. And even after all of this, he's still able to make more shadow clones and keep chucking out Rasen Shuriken and Bijudama left and right like it's nothing. So it's not even like you can argue that making these super clones of his tires him out or anything. We also know that at the bare minimum, he's able to make 12 of these, as we can see on this page here, where there are 13 Narutos in panel, the original and his 12 shadow clones. This actually means, funnily enough, that Naruto outnumbers the Akatsuki. Even if you throw Orochimaru and Zetsu into the mix, the Akatsuki only has 11 members, so if each of them were to take out one of Naruto's shadow clones, there'd still be one clone and the original Naruto left over for everyone to deal with. Without Orochimaru and Zetsu there, even if everybody took out one clone each, there'd still be 3 clones plus the original Naruto left for them to fight, and this is also generously assuming that each member of the Akatsuki is able to defeat one of Naruto's shadow clones. This is also assuming that Naruto can't create more than 12 clones, which we know isn't true because we've seen Kid Naruto create 2,000. Of course, if this Naruto did something like that, his individual clones probably wouldn't be as strong as, for example, the one that fought the second Tsuchikage, third Raikage, and Madara. But I don't think that really matters because 2,000 Narutos is going to be a problem for the Akatsuki, to be sure. There's no way around that. And on top of that, Naruto doesn't have to create these 2,000 shadow clones directly. Even if he starts with the bare minimum 12 that I mentioned earlier, his clones can create shadow clones of their own. Like on this page here, the one that fought Madara looks like it could have made upwards of 100 or 200. So if all of his clones were to do the same thing, then he'd easily end up cracking 1,000. But if you don't want to use an extreme number like 1,200, then at the very least I think everyone can agree that he shouldn't have any trouble making more than 12. The last bit of information that makes it easier to argue in Naruto's favor than in Madara's is that we have pretty concrete proof that he should be immune to Genjutsu. Now you can make hypothetical arguments about Madara's supposed immunity to Genjutsu, since he has a Rinnegan and all of that. But while that's never really stated, it's only kind of sort of implied. It's flat out said in the series that perfect Jinchuriki are basically unaffected by Genjutsu. So in the event that Naruto is trapped in a Genjutsu, like say for instance Itachi's or Obito's, Kurama should be able to break him out pretty easily. And now you could maybe argue that B was a special case or something, since Obito was able to put Yagura, another perfect Jinchuriki, in a Genjutsu so strong that it put him under Obito's complete and total control. But you'd think that if he could do something like that to Naruto, he would have just done it while they were fighting, or you'd think at the very least that he'd try to attempt it or something. But he never even brings up using Genjutsu against Naruto, like even as an offshoot possibility. So yeah. I don't think Genjutsu will play much of a role.
Again, see, to me, I think that's more of a slight against Kishimoto himself. I think because again, we've talked about this before, but Kishimoto has a tendency to give characters certain abilities, but then later on realizes, oh wait, if this person were to use that ability here, it would pretty much win them the fight, but I need the main characters to win the fight. So he either has characters forget they can do certain things, or just come up with some kind of a weak excuse as to why they can't do it. Because remember, when Sasuke was first introduced in part 2, we saw that his Sharingan evolved to the point where he can actually suppress the Nine-Tails' chakra inside Naruto, and yet we literally never see him use that again. You would think that it would be able to do that with, if it can work against the Nine-Tails, then it should be able to work against any tailed beast. You would think he would have used it against B, but he doesn't, which would have made the fight against him way easier if B wasn't able to utilize Gyuki's chakra. But see, again, it's another case of just Kishimoto making characters forget they can do certain things. Because if they did, then it would kind of go against the narrative that Kishimoto wants to write, which is, Naruto wasn't supposed to get caught at that moment, and if Obito did use that Genjutsu powerful enough to put even a Jinchuriki under his control, it would have kind of cinched the fight, but that's not what was supposed to happen. So Kishimoto again either has them forget or just decides not to do it, or like comes up with some weak excuse as to why it can't happen. Just like how Obito never utilizes the ability of the Rinnegan. It would have given him a severe advantage in the fight, but he had Kakashi say this whole thing of just controlling the 7 Jinchuriki was taking a lot out of him, so he can't use the Rinnegan for anything else, which to me, I always just thought it was a bit of a BS answer. To me, it's just, again, one of the criticisms I have for Kishimoto as a writer.
Role in this fight. Naruto also doesn't have to look Obito or Itachi in the eye. He can just close his eyes the way Kabuto did and sense where all of the Akatsuki are at until Obito and Itachi are taken care of. And even if he's too dumb to think of doing that himself, Kurama could probably suggest it to him. Like, considering that he's been on the receiving end of plenty of Sharingan Genjutsu over the course of the series, I don't think it's expecting too much of Kurama to assume he'll just tell Naruto, hey, don't look at the Uchiha's eyeballs. So unless either Itachi or Obito gets really lucky, they're probably not catching Naruto with one of their genjutsu, and even if they do, again, Kurama can just break him out. So then the question becomes, what could the Akatsuki do to Naruto? And the answer is not that much. There aren't too many members of the team who are really even worth talking about. The only ones that I think really have the potential to make any kind of meaningful difference here are Itachi, Pain, and Obito. Everyone else gets dealt with pretty quickly, and let me go ahead and go over each one briefly to explain why I think this. So Kakazu, who I think is one of the Akatsuki's strongest members, got hit by a Rasen Shuriken being carried by base Naruto, and it killed him. And yeah, Kakazu had 3 of his hearts taken out already by the time he was hit by this Rasen Shuriken, but I don't think that really matters. Maybe this is hyperbole, but right after seeing the Rasen Shuriken in action, Kakashi says that the number of attacks is almost infinite, and Tsunade later says that it rips the target apart at a cellular level. So I think if he got hit by another one, especially one that was amped up by the power boost provided by Sage Mode and KCM2, Kakazu would be toast. And if we're taking intel into consideration, since Naruto's already fought Kakazu, he'd think, oh, I killed this guy with a Rasen Shuriken last time, so let me just throw another one at him. And it'd be that simple. Yes, Kakazu would know to avoid the Rasen Shuriken since he's also fought Naruto before, but that doesn't mean he'd be able to do it. If he wasn't able to stop base Naruto from hitting him with a Rasen Shuriken point blank, then there's no way that he'd be able to dodge one that's been thrown at him by KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto. Konan nearly died after Obito stabbed her with a metal rod, so I think if she got hit by a planetary Rasengan or two, she'd probably kick the bucket. Deidara just simply isn't fast enough to compete with Naruto. He flat out says during his fight with Sasuke that Sasuke is too fast for him to handle, and he also says when Guy's team arrives in the middle of his fight with Kakashi and Naruto that he won't be able to outrun them. And even though we don't know what the extent of his durability is since he killed himself, I think it's safe to say that if Kakazu, who tanked having a Biju bomb shot right at his face from point-blank range, was killed by a Rasen Shuriken, Deidara probably would be too. The same probably goes for Sasori, and even though Naruto would have to try a bit harder since he'd have to break the Hiruko shell before he could do any real damage to Sasori himself, I mean, landing 2 attacks isn't that much to ask of him. In KCM1, which is weaker than KCM2, and also without the added boost provided by Sage Mode, he was faster than the 4th Raikage, who was one of the fastest ninja of all time. And with just Sage Mode, no KCM at all, one of his shadow clones was able to dodge an attack from the 3rd Raikage and subsequently hit the 3rd Raikage with a Rasengan while both of them were charging at each other at full speed. So with KCM2 and Sage Mode buffing him simultaneously, Naruto's just way too fast for people like Deidara and Sasori to hit him with any of their attacks or avoid any of his attacks. I mean, sure, they may be able to dodge some, but not everything that Naruto throws at them, and the same applies to most of the Akatsuki's other members. I'd be inclined to put more faith into Kisame if we hadn't seen Naruto make a complete joke out of him. Like, fresh after acquiring the ability to enter QB Chakra mode, Naruto blitzes Kisame pretty badly and forces him to start coughing up blood with one kick. Kisame remarks that Naruto's really fast, and B even compares his speed to that of Minato's teleportation jutsu. So if Kisame fought KCM2 Sage Mode Naruto, he'd get blitzed even worse, and if Naruto chose to hit him with anything stronger than a basic kick, he'd take a pretty substantial amount of damage. Like if a Hirudora was able to knock Kisame out of commission, then a Senjutsu Bijudama would probably get the job done too, and even if that's not the case, it's not like Naruto's only allowed to hit Kisame one time. He still has plenty of other stuff that he can access in his arsenal, so if the two of them went head-to-head, I don't think Kisame would have much of a chance. Aside from the big 3 I mentioned earlier, that just leaves Hidan, and I don't think anybody's gonna claim Hidan has a chance against this form of Naruto, so I think I can pretty safely move on. Now, some of you may be preemptively saying,
Swagkage, you freaking doofus. You are not taking teamwork into consideration here. There's too many of them and they can use teamwork. You doofus. You made this mistake in your last video, you idiot. You're talking about this like it's just 1 versus 1 battles. You moron. You freaking doofus. Moron.
And I mean, yeah, you're correct about that, but I feel like it's fair for me to do that in this case because, like we established earlier, Naruto's capable of creating at least 12 super clones, all capable of doing the same sort of crazy nonsense that the one he sent to assist the 4th Division could. This means that the Akatsuki will be forced to essentially fight 13 Narutos at the same time. And that means that the fight's going to devolve into a bunch of one-on-one fights anyway. Every member of the Akatsuki is going to be stuck fighting one or more of Naruto's shadow clones, and one of them may be unlucky enough to have to fight the real Naruto himself. You also don't have to set your expectations for either Naruto or Kurama very high to assume that one of them would probably think to split the Akatsuki up. Like, they're known for working in groups of 2, so it doesn't take that much brain power to realize that it probably isn't a good idea to allow them to abuse any synergy that they may have between one another. And with all of the large-scale attacks that Naruto has at his disposal, it won't be too hard for him to force the Akatsuki to move in different directions. Then, just like that, they're separated from one another. Then all Naruto would have to do is follow up by pursuing each member of the Akatsuki with one of his clones, and boom, they're all locked into a one-on-one fight against one of Naruto's shadow clones. Even if that doesn't happen, I think it's pretty unfair to assume that the Akatsuki works better as a team than Naruto does with literal clones of himself, so either way, I don't think that the Akatsuki's teamwork ability will make much of a difference here. Now moving on to the big boys, Itachi, Pain, and Obito. I mean, I don't really have that much to say about any of them, so sorry if this is a bit briefer than a lot of you had hoped for, but there's not much that any of them could do to make a dent in Naruto or even slow him down a little bit. So starting with Itachi, like I already said, his genjutsu won't work here, so he's going to have to rely on Amaterasu, his Susanoo, and I guess Izanami. Personally, I don't even think Itachi would consider using Izanami in this fight. Like, he should know that the moment he exits his Susanoo, Naruto is going to blitz him into next week. A couple hits from KCM to Sage Naruto and he is dead. And the thing is, he'll most likely be fighting one of Naruto's shadow clones, so he'll somehow have to get past the clone, make it all the way to the real Naruto's location, and somehow take care of the setup needed to pull off Izanami, all without sustaining any fatal wounds. I think that's just expecting a bit too much from Itachi, especially with his sickness being a problem and all of that. And even if you want to disregard his sickness, Itachi still has really bad stamina problems. Because of how quickly he's bound to tire himself out, he won't have very many opportunities to make much of a dent in Naruto. So wasting all of his resources on trying to pull off Izanami, it just isn't wise, and it's something that I can't see him doing. Anyway, so as for the Susanoo, the Yaramir is pretty strong, and I mean, everybody thinks that it can block anything or whatever. I kind of went over this in my Madara video, but we don't know if it's actually indestructible or not. Even if it is, it's not omnidirectional, so Naruto could just go around and shoot a Senjutsu Bijudama right into the back of Itachi's Susanoo, and just like that, he'd be dead. Now, something that's interesting is the way the databook describes the Yaramir. It sounds very similar to the Truth-Seeking Orbs, because it alters its properties in accordance with whatever attack it's colliding with. Like I said, this sounds very similar to the Truth-Seeking Orbs, which are vulnerable to being damaged by Senjutsu attacks. So if this is the way it works, it's fairly possible that Naruto could just crack the Yaramir open like an egg with a Senjutsu Tailed Beast Bomb. But even if that isn't the case, Naruto has so many ways of dealing with the Yaramir. Like, the worst case scenario is he'll just have to wait for Itachi's chakra supply to deplete itself, then his Susanoo will automatically disappear, and he'll basically be able to secure a free win. As for the Totsuka Blade, I mean, Naruto should know to avoid it since he watched Itachi one-shot Nagato with it, and especially with this knowledge on his side, he should be moving way too fast for the slow, clunky Totsuka Blade to pierce him. Pain is kind of self-explanatory because he lost to Sage Mode Naruto, and now I know that was only because of the help that Naruto got from the Nine Tails halfway through the fight, but now hopefully you see where I'm going with this. This Naruto has access to the full power of the Nine Tails, and he can stack Sage Mode on top of it, so he should easily outclass Pain at this point. Since all but one of the paths went down to standard baseline attacks, Naruto should be able to take most of them out with a single Rasen Rinnegan, and that would just leave the Diva path left over, and the only thing that he has that Naruto would have to worry about is like Chibaku Tensei, and considering what it took to blow up Nagato's gravity sphere, I think that a volley of Bijudama, like the one that Naruto shot at the Ten Tails, especially when amped by the power of Senjutsu, would be capable of producing similar results. Even if Naruto does somehow get trapped inside of Chibaku Tensei, he can just break out by manifesting his Kurama avatar. And for Pain, that would kind of suck, because if he were to use Chibaku Tensei, he'd end up sealing a handful of other Akatsuki members inside. So Naruto just breaking out immediately after would probably be a little bit demoralizing. I'm sure somebody will bring up Shinra Tensei in the comments, but Six-Tail Cloak Naruto was able to overpower one of Pain's Shinra Tensei, so this Naruto should have no problem doing the same thing. Without Sage Mode and without his Kurama avatar, he was able to deflect 5 Biju Dama at the same time. So a Shinra Tensei, even one on the same level as the one that destroyed Konoha, which, by the way, would probably do some pretty serious damage to the Akatsuki, like Chibaku Tensei, shouldn't be too hard for Naruto to deflect or outright avoid either. This just leaves Obito, and the problem with Obito here is it's pretty simple. The only thing he can do to Naruto is suck him into the Kamui dimension. Problem with that is the first Naruto that gets trapped there is probably going to be a clone, and Obito will still have plenty of other clones along with the real Naruto to deal with. Now, whenever Naruto tries to attack him, Obito is probably going to have to use Kamui to slip through the attack if he doesn't want to take some serious damage. Whenever he does, though, the Naruto that's inside of the Kamui dimension will be able to damage him. We saw this happen when Kakashi was trapped inside, so I see no reason to believe the same wouldn't apply in this fight. This means that Obito basically has no offensive firepower, and on top of that, whenever he uses Kamui offensively, he can't phase through attacks at the same time, and I think we can all agree that Naruto is definitely fast enough to capitalize on Obito materializing his body, and since Obito can't take very many punishing physical hits, it won't take long for Naruto to get rid of him. Now, in the comments of the last video, there were a lot of people who were pretty upset about the fact that I said Obito isn't very durable, especially because I commended him for his durability in my How Strong is Obito video. The thing is, it's one thing to be durable, and it's completely different to be able to tank the sorts of attacks that Naruto and Madara can rapidly dish out, and Obito does not fall in category number 2. We're also talking about Orange Mask Obito, not White Mask War Arc Obito. We've got the same sort of plot buff that Kakashi did. He's just a lot more physically impressive than he was at any point before. So using War Arc Obito feats to hype up Orange Mask Obito is you shouldn't do it. They are not the same, and their capabilities are very different. Anyway, that should cover everything. Sorry if I glossed over any member of the team in particular that you were looking forward to hearing about. I mean, as you can see, the video's already over 20 minutes long, so even when trying to compress everything that I had to say down to as little as I possibly could, I still ended up with plenty to go over, but hopefully it's not too much of a problem for anybody.
He did kind of
anyway,
gloss over
like I said, that
I
should be everything.
I don't think Hedon could really do anything
If you have any ideas for future video topics, leave them in the comments or shoot me a mention on Twitter. Make sure you have a great rest of the day, and until next time, I'll talk to you later. Swagkage out. Bye.
Okay, I think that's the video. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like he said. The looking back on it, it is almost insane what Naruto in the War Arc did. Some of the feats he accomplished. Although personally, like I said, I think that's mostly due to Kishimoto sort of kind of pushing Naruto a little bit. Personally, I think that it's kind of insane that he was able to accomplish all of those things. The fact that he continuously fought for God knows how long. I mean, remember there was a time in the war when the allied shinobi forces showed up, and then Naruto said, I'm gonna have to let you guys take over for a bit because I basically used up a lot of my chakra. I need time to heal and wait until my chakra comes back. And that was fine, but that lasted all of 5 minutes, and then he was back onto the field. Personally, again, for me, I feel like that's just mostly on the writer. I feel like he really wanted Naruto back into the fight and didn't keep him out of it for too long, even though, like, considering if Naruto says he's out of chakra, and considering how much chakra Naruto has, you would think it would take him a while in order to replenish his chakra pool. But the fact that it only took 5 minutes before he was back in the fight, to me that's just that makes no goddamn sense. To me that's more on Kishimoto wanting to put him back into the fight. Also, not really making it clear just how much time has passed from when he said he needs to heal up to the time when Sasuke shows up and then he's back in the fight again. We don't really know how much time has passed, so I mean, to us, it looks like it wasn't really a lot of time at all. But again, that goes to show, remember, all of the events of the war, at least when the Ten Tails was born and then the Allied Shinobi forces show up, all of that happens within the span of one night. One night, all of that shit happened in one night, which is insane, honestly. Excuse me. It's absolutely insane. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Remember to like the video, share the video, subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell for notifications, and I hope to see you for the next video. Bye for now.